Good evening and welcome to the Single Parent Show, brought to you by Christ Our Shepherd Ministries. I am La Petite Dees, and I will be conducting this segment of the show. We are very blessed to have a gentleman with us that is a pioneer parent, Larry Taylor, a single parent for 17 years. That is awesome. And you're also the co-founder of Charlotte Single Parent Group, where you have taught and conducted sessions for single parents. Tell us a little bit about the foundation and some of your emphasis on starting this program.
Well, the group itself was the church that I belonged to, kind of a joint venture between our church and the Harris YMCA, where back in, hard to believe, back in '98, it was prior to that we did a community survey, which most of us, again, who were single parents, we already knew the answers, but we went out to see what resources were available in our area for single parents and single parent families. And no surprise, but we didn't come up with anything, and with the number of single parent families that we have in our community, it was just, it kind of struck us as being, hey, we have a real need here.
Sure.
And so it really kind of started as just getting together and getting other single parents together, and it kind of evolved over the years into being more of a classroom slash discussion setting. We kind of evolved into that kind of format, and so really what we have always focused on is the common denominator that we all have as single parents, because when you talk about a single parent, you're talking about a wide range of potential parents out there.
Absolutely.
But the one thing we all had in common, which may seem like a no-brainer, but is we're parents. And so that has always been the focus of everything we have done. Is how can I be the best parent that God wants me to be?
Sure.
And understanding the difficulties and the challenges that our children face, that we face as single parents. But also understanding that God doesn't put us in any situation that He doesn't give us the grace and the ability to overcome with His help. So, yeah, it is. We are where we are. We've accepted that God has us in where we're at in life at this point. And so, how can we build on that? And how can we? Everything that we have done has been, pretty much what we're talking about tonight is, developing a game plan too.
Absolutely.
As single parents, we oftentimes don't have the ability, being in survival mode of, running around all day long at our jobs and then coming home and doing our second full-time job, and to actually take the time to take a step back and to say, how do I become a better parent? What's the methodology? What are the things that I need to put in place that can help me to be a better parent? Because oftentimes we end up parenting by the seat of our pants, and just kind of on the fly, and we don't take that time to really think through and what it is that we want to achieve with our kids. What are the goals that we want with them? What are the the values that we want to instill in them, and how do we get to that point?
And the last time you were here, you guys discussed several different issues, and one of those being from a more directive standpoint versus more of a permissive. So why don't you just discuss some of the authoritarian versus permissive, and just touch on some of those areas?
Well, usually, when you talk about parenting, and especially for those of us that don't have that time and all,
Sure.
we often resort to the easiest method of parenting, and that's usually the two extremes on the the authoritarian, where basically it's my way, the highway. I'm just doing it out of impulse and whatever I feel. There's really no objective as to what I'm trying to pursue, other than I say what I say, and there's no thought behind it, because it's again an easy
Very
approach.
militant.
And then you have the other approach of being a permissive parent, as far as that too doesn't take a whole lot of thought, to just let whatever, there are no boundaries in place, and and often what we see happening is we'll start off on that permissive foot, where we kind of let the kids do whatever, and we'll be talking that ties in with what we're going to be talking about today too, with the guilt factor. But we often have a situation where we'll let the kids, the very few boundaries, very few rules, we'll get to that point of absolute desperation and frustration, and then we will flip, and then we will jump to the other end of the spectrum and be the authoritarian, monster that comes into, and so it's very confusing for our kids, for one. It really doesn't put anything in place as far as what we're talking about with discipline and guidance and teaching them anything. We're just, the kids are walking on eggshells because they don't know when they're going to chew through that last nerve that we have.
Yes.
And so what we're trying to do is get a happy medium, to think through so that we can be consistent and that we can be authoritative, but not authoritarian. Yes. And authoritative being, where the main difference is being a parent out of love, not out of anger, but yet at the same time not being permissive and allowing for them not to have, any boundaries and not going in that, that they learn responsibility and they learn those things. So that's really kind of where we're trying to move towards.
Okay, what about discipline and punishment? I think that's a tie.
It ties, you're right, because, discipline has its roots in discipleship.
Sure.
You're talking about a teacher-student role. As parents, that's our role, is to teach our children, to prepare them to handle life on their, on God's terms, obviously, but, to prepare them in that, in that role so that they can be successful citizens. Mm-hmm. And to teach them as far as the value systems and all the things that as Christians that God has given us to pass along to our children. So discipline is out of that love that we have in a teaching. Now punishment, and sometimes punishment can be discipline. It's a lot of terminology a lot of times, yes. But when we talk about as far as punishment of just being anger-based, that's what we want to be careful of. And it's not to say we're not going to get angry,
sure. Angry, but sin not.
But it's making sure that, again, that there is a game plan in place, that there's a purpose in what we're trying to do with our children and trying to teach them. So those are some of the things that trying to get the thought process in that direction.
Do you think a lot of parents have a difficult time punishing their kids?
Well, getting into the whole guilt, yes. That is because if I'm experiencing, and that's why we put guilt into our class, and as part of this game plan, you may say, well, what does guilt have to do with developing a game plan? It impacts so much of our game plan as a parent and how we effectively parent. And what we do is we really dive into what I call are two forms of guilt, true guilt and false guilt.
Now, I read that, and we have an idea of what we think it is, but why don't you expound on true guilt versus false guilt?
Well, first, to back up a little bit, and we joke in the class, guilt and single parenting are synonymous oftentimes. Yes. Any parent is going to, usually, most parents, loving parents are going to have some guilt. But for us as single parents, it often is one of the pervading issues that we battle as far as to how to deal with it and how it impacts our parenting. Because granted, we understand how God has developed and set up the family unit, and so when if we're not, whether it be through a bad divorce or a non-existent parent, or we see those things happening to our children that have a great impact on us, and so that impacts our whole approach to parenting and the guilt that we bring on ourselves. And so, it's a very integral part of who we are as parents, oftentimes as single parents. And so what we want to do is we want to say, okay, let's look at this thing called guilt. And, true guilt being, God has given us a wonderful mechanism inside of called the conscience. And, to where, when we are living outside of His will, or we go against His plan, or we sin, we have that conscience inside of us that pricks our hearts, that says, no, we're off base. Exactly. And so, that's good. We need that, and that's, that's what we call true guilt. When you get into the realm of what we call the false guilt, it gets into more of a gray, fuzzy area, and it's sometimes harder to nail down, because it's more of an ambiguous